Hello and welcome to DIY Therapy. As always, we'll start with our disclaimer. This podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not designed to diagnose or treat. When beginning any exercise program, it should be reviewed and discussed with your medical professional prior to beginning. Information on this podcast is not designed to replace medical treatment. My name is Will. With me as always is Andy. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Buenas noches.
I speak English and bad English, unfortunately.
Yeah. I dropped out of in high school. I dropped out of Spanish after a year and a half, moved on to Latin. So my Spanish knowledge is very limited.
How often do you speak Latin to other people?
I think I still remember the. I went to Catholic grade school, so I think I still remember the Our Father in Latin. But don't quiz me right now on it. So
well, you could make it up, and I would not know.
Yeah. So hey, big day tomorrow, right?
Oh yeah, Captain Marvel opens. Yeah.
Yes.
It's been getting mixed reviews.
Listeners here, you would realize that Will and I are kind of obsessive with pop culture and media, or really the Marvel movies in general. And Game of Thrones.
Yeah, Game of Thrones. That was, in my opinion, that was a bigger news. The actual drop of the real trailer for Game of Thrones, seeing actual footage and.
Oh yeah. Exciting stuff for the obsessive fan, which we are.
Well, I mean, I'm not as bad as I'll watch the videos of like people trying to pick apart the stuff like in the from the trailer, like, oh look, this means this is gonna probably happen, or this is gonna happen, like, yeah.
Actually, I don't like to do that because then it kind of
ruins it a little bit.
I'll watch
or builds up,
but I don't want to start to dissect it because then
it can either ruin it or it can build up expectations that cannot be met.
No, exactly. Well, but then like what you're finding a lot of times now, and I'm sure it happened with last year's Infinity War, is that they're doing, bits and pieces of trailers that don't actually exist,
Oh yeah,
in the movie, just to throw off fans.
Yeah, Marvel's got that kind of money. Game of Thrones does not.
I don't know.
Well, Marvel's got Disney money.
What is Disney?
What is Disney?
It's just a small company, small homegrown company.
Yeah, it's just this guy who had a dream to build a park in a swamp.
Bought all that land in Florida. Good Lord.
I know.
How that ever worked out, I'm not sure. But his head is frozen, so if we do ever figure out that technology, we can bring him back.
We'll just put his brain in a robot, right?
Ruby.
All right.
Ruby.
All right. Today we're talking about exercise. If it's good for you. Spoiler alert, it is. If it's bad or good for your current injuries. The positive things of exercise, the negative things of exercise, if there are any. You got anything?
No. Okay,
there you go. That's the summary of that. Exercise be good, and it cannot hurt your. Well, it can hurt your
overtraining.
Yeah, overtraining can, but with smart training, SMART training, as they say.
Yeah. So yeah, I think. The one thing that, and you can probably attest to this, Will, in your experience in the clinic, one of the big things I think people come in with is fear that they're going to hurt themselves if they have some kind of pre-existing, diagnosis, specifically like arthritic changes of the knees, of the hips, of the spine, and what type of exercise can that tissue actually be able to tolerate, what is too much, what is too little, et cetera, and there's a lot of unknowns for people, and so there's actually been significant amount of research that's been done in the last 3 years that has been published that really indicates that really from a arthritic standpoint, hip, knee, and spine, there is no real correlation to exercise and making those things actually come about at their beginning, so kind of onset, or actually making them progress, which is really interesting and probably is something that many people would kind of look at, with a little bit of
skepticism.
skepticism. So, that's really what the research is actually showing, is that they've taken all of these individuals with arthritic changes. They followed them, through exercise programs, both moderate and vigorous exercise. And what they found is that, it's not progressing the disease. In fact, it's actually having some pain reduction value to it. So the overall, outcome of this is that, really what happens is we end up really becoming more or less fearful and anxious of doing these things. So we become more sedentary, which then those joints, in my theory and what the theories of most of these papers are, that then we become weaker, with a little bit of weakness within that joint, that structure. There becomes more, more laxity, more amount of range of motion or shear forces that occur in that joint, and then that creates more arthritic changes, which then actually leads to more increased pain when you do go and try to initiate, activities that are outside of, your normal everyday stuff. And then when we have that pain with that initial activity, we then get it in our head, so to speak, that, well,
every time I do
that activity was bad, so I shouldn't be doing that, and it leads us to more sedentary lifestyle, which it just kind of cycles us through this process, right? And so what these articles have said is that the exact opposite is true. By staying in moderate to vigorous exercise, and this could be general strengthening, this could be weight-bearing strengthening, this could be walking, this could be doing things like the recumbent bicycle, this could be doing things such as running. All of these things are actually leading to better joint stability, which then actually will decrease the amount of arthritic changes and decrease the amount of pain. So it's the exact opposite of really what I think the perception is of the general public.
Yeah, sort of a causation correlation kind of thing.
Yeah. And what a lot of people have to realize, and this is probably one of my soapboxes that I get on a lot in the clinic, is that, whenever you hear the words, you've got moderate, severe, arthritic changes, et cetera, what people don't realize is that, arthritis is a normal process. It's the aging of the spine. It's similar to like wrinkles on your face. If you are in your mid-30s, you don't look like you're 16 anymore. You've got wrinkles on your face. You've aged. It doesn't change the functionality of your face. You can still breathe, blink, see, smell, talk, et cetera. All of these things are the same, in correlation to the spine. We can still bend, twist, move. It doesn't necessarily mean that arthritic changes are actually associated with pain. The other thing is that arthritis right now, especially when we start talking about spine, knee, and hips, they aren't graded very well. And so, again, a very common misconception.
Explain that, graded very well.
Yeah, so like the common grades that you hear are mild, moderate, and severe. Well, mild for who? Mild for what age bracket?
For example, I had pit pain when I got an X-ray because my wife made me go get an X-ray because she's tired of seeing me drag my leg around like a wild animal.
Injured wild animal.
Injured, yeah, I guess. And it was arthritic, and they labeled it as severe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, the big thing here is, okay, is it severe for someone in your age bracket, or is it severe, based upon what they actually see on the imaging? Now, for you, because you're younger, it is actually severe for someone in your age bracket. But if you were to take that same arthritic change and put it in an X-ray for someone in their, say, 70s or 80s, that may be an absolutely normal image, which is what is confusing for people.
Yeah.
So it is normal to have moderate arthritic changes in your upper 30s and 40s. It's completely normal to have that. But when people hear I've got moderate arthritis, they all of a sudden go, oh my gosh, what is going on? I'm broken. I can't do anything. And then that leads to more sedentary activity, and that leads to more, more
instability and weakness and yada, yada, yada.
Further progression. Yeah. Yep. So hopefully we said that clear.
It kind of boils down to, if you don't use it, you lose it kind of idea, where if you don't use the strength, you don't use the activity strength, you lose it, which can progress your actual symptoms more than had you continue doing the activity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, again, just some like general benefits of exercise in recent research that we know that has become kind of objective truths through the research and the empirical data. Exercise in general, it helps reduce chronic pain. Okay. We kind of talked about how that happens with arthritic joints. It will actually increase your sleeping when you're doing more exercise throughout the day. So you'll be more tired and you'll sleep better. You'll get into that.
Yeah, your rhythm will get better.
That deep sleep. And interesting related research actually indicates that people who have more time in those deep sleeping stages actually have less chronic pain. So exercise will get you sleep better. Sleep is related. Improved sleep and quality of sleep will actually translate to decreased chronic pain. So important from that standpoint. It enhances mental health. I think this is all. I think anybody can relate to this, whether or not you've had several days or even weeks where you've gotten limited sleep, and how we feel when we get limited sleep compared to what we typically get, how much more irritable we are, how much more things affect us, whether or not we have any like morbidities or psychological problems or mild, moderate, or severe, such as, anxiety,
it helps all that stuff like significantly.
Yes, and there's all this stuff from a chemical standpoint, that dopamine is released, serotonin is released. These are all things that really affect the brain and how we interact. Our brain interacts with different stimulants.
You feel like you have more, weirdly conversely, you have more energy after you exercise than if you don't.
Absolutely. Then certainly it's going to improve your function, balance, coordination, just in everyday activities. You'll be able to tolerate these things. So, if something like, walking the dog or, vacuuming a couple of rooms, if those things were things that, used to just exhaust you, all of a sudden, now you're not exhausted. You don't have to take a break when you get more physical activity.
Yep.
Improves cardiovascular system, lowers cardiac risk.
What?
Shocking, right? And then improves just general mobility. So those are just, obviously, and the list goes on and on. Those are just some things that we kind of wanted to highlight about just kind of generally how.
Yeah, it's all the stuff that everybody knows that, is like, yeah, I know that exercise is good for me. It might blah, blah, blah. But it's important. It doesn't even matter what you do. It's that you do something. You don't have to be doing the most extreme exercise program or, it just can be something. I mean, even those, what are those, the women's exercise program called?
Women's exercise program?
Yeah.
Yoga?
No, not yoga, because that could be men too. No, that they had where the women go and like they it's mostly just like a chit chat session for them. I can't remember.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Is that Sunday morning coffee?
It might be.
Okay.
But just even something simple is, it doesn't have to be. You're just moving, getting up and moving, and
yeah, and again, the purpose of this podcast is to show that if you are having some of these deficiencies, sleep, mental health issues, easily fatigued, low endurance levels, low energy levels, just stressed in general, but you're afraid to exercise. Again, we all know that exercise helps these things, but you're afraid to exercise because you have a knee, hip issue, back issue. Don't be. Get out there and start. Start someplace. Start small. It could be if you can't stand and walk very well. Well, start with a small bicycle. Recumbent bicycle. You can, but a lot of times in garage sales, you can find Schwinn bikes, and you can get on a Schwinn bike. There are little pedals that you can get that you can put in front of your. If you're sitting on the couch or in your chair, you can put down.
Yeah, you can exercise while watching TV, man.
I know. Watch out. Can do anything while watching TV these days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So you start low, and you can build yourself up. You can do some general strengthening exercises like mini squats, mini lunges, and things like that in a standing position. Kicking out to the side, marching in place. Those are all considered exercise that can start you off and get you tolerant to different activities. Then you can lead to more upright walking, possibly more, aggressive strength training, and certainly you could get to where you're doing elliptical, Stairmasters, running, those types of things. But you got to start someplace.
Yeah, you have to wade, like I think we've talked about before. You got to wade into the pool.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just jump in the deep end. You got to wade in.
Sink like a rock. So then the last topic is really more or less, okay, so if we know that exercise has all these general, benefits, and we know that we're not going to hurt any pre-existing conditions, can exercise actually lead to, decreasing the risk of developing different musculoskeletal, muscle pains, joint pains down the road? And the short answer to that is
no. Yes?
Wrong. Yes. Of course, right?
Yeah, I wasn't really paying attention.
Would your fat cat come in?
He was kind of, the door is closed and I just saw a paw, which I'm surprised can fit underneath the door.
He got like
a
man hands.
It was like a horror movie where you just see the fingers. Yeah.
So what a lot of research or current or recent research, there's a study done in 2014 that indicated that really, surprisingly enough, stretching in general didn't really reduce the amount of risk for joint pain, musculoskeletal pains, which I think would probably also shock some people. Cross-training was a big one. I think that's somewhat obvious, when we cross-train. If we were to run every single day over and over and over again and just hit the pavement, well, we might start to develop repetitive stress syndromes in ankle, knee, hip, etc. But cross-training, when you're doing things, switching up.
I was going to say, you're probably just going to do it. Explain what cross-training is.
Yeah, cross-training is essentially when you change your exercise program. So one day you do like a biking. One day you do a running. One day you do a little bit of weight training. One day you do yoga. So you're just keeping the training sessions somewhat variable, so that the body just doesn't get overused. So that has about a 38% chance to reduce risk for further injury. Proprioception training. That's essentially the small little receptors that are within the joint. They tell your brain where your joint is in space, and they allow you to kind of react. Think of yourself as stepping into a hole and the leg twisting and having your body react fairly quickly to kind of counterbalance that unexpected drop into the hole to protect the joint. That's proprioception. So proprioception training, when you're doing when you're doing some of your training, can actually reduce risks of injuries by about 45%. And then specific strength training will actually reduce your risk for injury by 69%. So which is huge.
That's huge.
Which again falls right into what we said earlier. The stronger the joint, the more stable the joint, the less shear forces, the less pain that occurs, the more the joint can actually tolerate. So really, again, the one risk that you have from training is overtraining. So doing too much too quickly or doing the same repetitive things over and over again. That's about the only downfall. I mean, there's other downfalls. You can overdo it in other ways, but for the most part, generally speaking, those are the two main pitfalls that people kind of fall into.
Yeah. The way I always kind of describe why cross training is good is the body is smart and wants to work out or wants to do things in the most efficient way possible.
Exercise good, sedentary bad. All right, let's wrap it up.
This podcast was for educational purposes only. It is not designed to diagnose or treat. When beginning any exercise program, it should be reviewed and discussed with your medical professional prior to beginning. Information on this podcast is not designed to replace medical treatment. Remember, treat yourself.